show you some. The correspondence that we had then. The letters when they got home were this size. But when we made them,
Mom, do you have any recent pictures of you in your uniform?
do I have pictures of me?
The last one you had taken in your uniform? You know, when you couldn't get a zip. When you couldn't zip the skirt. Do you have any of those pictures
That's what?
of you in your uniform?
Yeah, I showed them.
No, more recently.
More recent.
Yeah, like the ones Dad took of you with no film in the camera.
No, I don't. I gave my uniform to the museum.
Okay.
So when I was out of the service for 50 years, I went over to the museum and asked them if I could borrow it. And then I'd have to take pictures of me, and 50 years later, and I could still get into it. And so I got into my uniform, and I danced around, and I saluted, and I acted crazy, and I took my uniform back. And then Leonard told me there wasn't any film in the camera. I'm trying to find the V-mail.
That's what the letters were called, was V-mail.
This was called the V-mail, and that's what size it was when you got it. I'm trying to find it.
And if there was anything, somebody read your letters. If there was anything in it that they didn't want somebody else to read, they took a marker and marked through it. So
Yeah.
some of the ones that Dad sent Mom are all marked up. Just if they thought anything could be passed on or...
Location or anything like that. I was going to pick one up that was like that, because this was to my sister, I think. But if this were censored, and they were censored, and then they would mark it out. This is the size of them. When we wrote them, this is the size of the V-mail. There's but then they shrunk them down and put them on film, and then when they got to where they were going, that's the size they were then. Yeah, saved a lot of paper, postage and stuff, and we didn't have to pay any postage or anything on it because we were in the service there. But this shows it was censored and who censored it. And I think the service is good because, like I say, it teaches coordination, and I just think it can be good for anybody. I would, if I were young, I'd do it again. I'd do it again instead of take an old lady. My family wouldn't have anything to say about it either.
I wouldn't stop you.
I was 23 when I went in the service, so I didn't need my parents' approval. You could get in if you were 21 years old, and if you had no dependents, 21 to 35, if you could, 35 was the oldest they'd take you, and no dependents. You had to be 5 feet tall and at least 100 pounds.
And you ought to tell them about that, how it was the Women's Auxiliary Corps when you went in.
It was what?
The Women's Auxiliary Corps when you went in. It was the Women's Auxiliary Corps when you went in.
Okay. Yeah, when I first went in, it was the Women's Auxiliary Corps, WAAC. Then they changed it. We were volunteers, And we didn't have the privileges that the men have. We didn't have free postage, we didn't have insurance, we didn't have medical. We were volunteers. But then they changed it to make it the Women's Army Corps, and they took out the word auxiliary and made it a part of the Army. Then I read a while ago, and looking through this, that in 1978 it was no longer the Women's Army Corps, it became part of the regular Army. They dropped that altogether. If you were a woman in the service, you wouldn't be in the WACs, you'd be in the Army.
But you were a whack.
I was a WAC, yeah. And then when they went from the Women's Auxiliary to the Women's Army, we could re-enlist if we wanted to. We could re-enlist and stay in there, or we could go back to civilian life. So I chose to stay in.
How long did she serve?
Ask her.
How long did you serve?
What?
How long did you serve?
Oh, I have it right in there.
Ask why. Why she served? Why she enlisted for? Why? Like, why she started for?
What are you
She
looking
did.
for?
How many done with his paper?
She wanted it. She felt like it, like you know, like you.
When did you go in? You don't remember when you were discharged?
Yes, I went in May 1943, and I was discharged in September 1945. And I served 3, 2, I had it all right in here.
What was it on?
Huh? Well, anyway, it was 2 months, 11,
2 years.
2 years, 11 months, and 6 days, or something like that. I have it on a piece of paper, but anyway, I would like to say that it was a change. Women were not doing things like this. They were still housewives. And to go into the service was quite a change for women, because they were taken, later we would put on the equals as men with pay and things, but to begin with, we were volunteers, and that's the way we served. Then, because of women going in the service and replacing men, it made a breakthrough, the fact that women could do things other than housewives. And they found out they could work in factories and replace the men in the Army. And that was quite something else. And then you'd be surprised, though, how many women went into the service and served in the, there was a, in World War II, there were 400,000 females in uniform, and there was 150,000 of these in the Women's Army.
What advice would you give to our generation? What advice would you give to our generation?
What advice would I give to your generation? Well, if your mom and dad weren't listening, I'd say, if you wanted to join the service, do it. If they objected to it, I think you'd have to consider that too, though. But right now, it wouldn't be too bad to join the service. The war's not too hot on the front. It's hot enough, but there's likely that you probably wouldn't be sent overseas.
How did your mom and dad feel when you joined?
I didn't ask them. I was 23 years old. I wasn't living at home, and I was 23.
But you had to tell them.
I had to tell them, oh yeah.
What did Grandma say when you told her?
Well, she wasn't happy about it at all.
But you went anyway.
I said, too late. I was already all enrolled, enlisted. There was something else to say.
Was Dad in the Army when you went in? He'd already gone, hadn't he? Where was Dad when you enlisted?
I think he was in California.
In basic training? In basic training?
Yeah.
And then when did he, were you in Africa when he shipped out?
Probably, I don't know. Probably.
Here's a
So
picture
did they
of
get
Dad.
married after they both came back?
So did you and your husband get married after you came back from the war?
Yeah, after we both came back.
This
we
is,
got married.
this is my dad. And
What's his name?
his story was that Mom would never have caught him to marry him had he not lost a leg. He couldn't run as fast that way. But they were high school sweethearts. So.
Better than that. I got this piece of paper where it says 11 months, 2 years, 4 months, 6 days. 3 months and 26 days were in basic training at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. The rest of the time was 11 months in Oran, Africa, and 14 months in Caserta, in Italy. I gotta show you a better picture there, see? That was, he was in the service before I was, so,
What was his name?
Leonard Enslow. Mhm.
Do you know anything else about it? When they were born, or anything?
Mom, I
When they
got it.
were, when they were married or anything? No, how many kids? You don't need that. Okay.
Let's see, what else did I want to tell you?
Well, what else did I tell you? They could have given us. It's gonna go over. Because parts of it where she stuttered.
Oh, one thing that I think is really important, the women, the Negroes and the Mexicans, the dark-colored ones, were all kept separate from us. And then they had their own campground, they had their own movie theater, they had their own parade grounds, and they did not mingle with us whatsoever. That was World War II. It was only after that that they decided that you know, we were all equal, that color didn't matter. And I think that's really a good thing that came out. That because I can remember when you folks, when you Mexican people had to sit at a certain place in Garden City when we went to the movie. I can remember that. And you know, the war brought about the fact that the color of your skin doesn't matter. And I think that's one good thing that came out of it.
Is that it? I think it's okay. You're going under 30 minutes. It don't matter? Oh, okay.
I've got here in my notes that